Okay, so now we're going to take a look at adding some moving platforms to our game. We don't want to use any of the existing kind of wide and thick platforms that we have. We want something that looks slightly bit different so that we know it's a different kind of object in our world. So what we're going to do is go into our art folder, scroll down to where all our kind of grassy objects are, down to here, and we've got a couple of more thin looking platforms here. So we're not going to take this first one because it's kind of got two rounded corners at either side. We want it to be a bit wider than that. So we're going to take this one here, and then if we scroll down again, there should be some more just a little bit further down. So we're going to grab this one. We're going to grab the two thin ones from down here. And now what we've got, if we zoom in, we've got a rounded corner on the edge, we've got sharp corners on the middle one, and we've got a rounded corner on the other side of the other one. Okay, so those are the three pieces we're going to use. So again, like when we constructed these platforms, we need to make a holder to put all these in, and we're going to create that here. We'll create empty, and we're going to call this thin platform, and we're going to make all the other parts a child of that. So then the middle one, we want to set that to be the middle of our platform. So again, we'll go to position 0, 0, 0. Then on our other sprites, we're going to move them as well. So we're going to hit our V to lock to the corner, and we'll lock that into place there. And on this guy, we'll do the exact same thing and lock it into place like that. So now we've got our platform all nicely set up. And of course, the one thing missing from this now is we need to add a box collider to it, like this. And by default, a box collider is kind of just set to be 1 by 1. So obviously this is the wrong size for this platform. So let's make it, we know it's 3 wide, so let's make the size of it 3. And we know it's about half a thing high, so we'll make the height of it 0.5. And then we need to move it up a little bit, so we'll move it up to 0.25, like that. And there we go, we have our platform nicely set up for us. Okay. There's a tiny little gap at the bottom, but that doesn't really matter because we won't be standing on the bottom of our platform. And now there's one more thing we need to do with this, because we know that everything else that we want to stand on, remember that we had to set the layer of it to be ground. So back over here on our tin platform, we want to make sure we're going to the main holder object, and we want to set that to be layer ground. We can change the children as well, that's fine. So now we know we have an object here, which is our moving platform. So now that we have the platform itself, we'll actually just make that quickly a prefab so that we can make use of that again in the future if we want to. But we're going to need some more things to be able to move our platform. So obviously, if we're going to be moving between one place and another, we need to know where our platform should start moving and where it should end moving. And obviously it'll move back and forward between those 2 points, but we need at least those 2 points. So we're going to need to create empty, and we're going to call this start. And we're going to create another empty that we're going to call end. And although that's actually appeared as a child of start, if we just click on it and drag it down, it'll no longer be a child. So now we've got a tin platform, a start, and an end. But rather than having them kind of starting to fill up the hierarchy here, let's make another container object to hold them for us. So we're going to create empty, and we'll actually just drag it down so it's not a child again. And we're going to call this one moving platform, because this is going to be the whole array that contains all these and makes our moving platform work. So we'll drag the 3 of these guys here and make them a child of moving platform like that. So then if we want to collapse it, we can make it smaller into the world like that. Okay, so our moving platform then. So now that we have our tin platform, we have a start point, and what we'll actually do, we have our moving platform here. We want our tin platform to always start at the exact middle of our moving platform. So we'll set this to be 0, 0, 0. We have our start point, which is at 0, 0, 0, and that makes perfect sense because we want our platform to start at the start point. But we have an end point that is kind of at the same place. So rather than having it just be there, we'll just drag it over to the side like this. So now we have an actual endpoint in the world. But the problem then is, okay, so now we have our platform, but we can't actually see where our start and our end point is. But there's a simple little thing we can add to both of these to make it to make them be actually visible in the world. If we go up into our inspector and we've got this kind of three-sided box here, if we click on that, we get some options of things we can do with it. So if we were to click one of these wide bars at the top, say this green one for example, we get a little thing saying, if we just click off it, it says start, and it shows the object itself within the world, which is perfectly fine, but it takes up a bit of space. We don't really need to know that this is the start point in particular. We can kind of create our own shorthand for that. If we go into it again, if we go down and just make it a green dot like that, and we go to our endpoint and make that a red dot, then we're creating a system for ourselves where we know, okay, a green dot is a start point, a red dot is an endpoint, and we know that the platform will kind of move between those 2 points. Again, this won't actually show up in the game itself if our player was over there. Let's just move the camera over so we can see for a second. So although we can see those dots within the scene view here, if we go to the game, they're not visible, so we don't have to worry about our player seeing those things and kind of seeing behind the scenes almost of our game. So let's pop that back there. Okay, so now we have the basics of everything set up, so let's actually go and create a script to control our moving platform and make it move between these 2 points in the world. So we're going to go to our assets, our scripts folder, create a new C# script that we're going to call moving object. So we're going to call it moving object rather than moving platform, because we want to be able to use this again for other stuff in the future. So we'll open this up now. And there's a couple of things that we'll need to know with this script. So obviously we need to know what object is it that we're moving. So that'll be, in this case, it'll be our TIM platform. We'll need to know at what point it should start moving, at what point it should end moving, and we'll also need to know how fast should it move between both of those two things. So we'll first of all create a reference to the object, which will be our TIM platform. So we'll say public game object. We'll just call this the object to move, and then we'll need to know what our start and end points are. So we'll say public transform. So rather than being a game object this time, we're just saying transform, because all we need to know is the position of these things. We don't need to know what kind of game object it is or anything like that. So we'll say public transform start point and public transform end point, like that. Okay, and then finally, like I said, we're going to need to know how fast we should move. So we'll say public float move speed. So that'll be how fast we move between those 2 points in the world. Okay, so basically what we wanted to do is move, when it first starts running, we wanted to move from the start point to the end point. So that'll be fine, we'll use the move speed and that'll be grand. But once we get to the end point, we also wanted to go, okay, now we need to know, now we need to go back towards the starting point again. So rather than having to set up a complicated system where we're checking, where we're switching endpoints and start points around, what we're going to do is create an extra variable here that we're going to say, it'll be private, and we'll say vector tree, because we're only going to want an x, y, and a z value. So private vector tree current target. So this will be whatever point we're actually going towards at the moment, and then once we get to that point, we'll say, okay, our new current target should be the other end. Okay, so basically in our start function then, what we're saying, as soon as the game starts, we want to say, okay, once our script starts going, our first current target should always be the end point, because we're starting at the start point, obviously. So our current target will be equal to our endpoint dot position. I didn't mean to create that curly bracket there, or I didn't mean to delete it, sorry. So our endpoint dot position, and then our semicolon there, like that. So we know that if we're just talking about a transform, so on our end here, if we go back in and look at it, we've got a transform and it's got a position. So rather than having to get any more specific than that, we just want to get the position of the transform in the world. So we're going to the current target, and our current target is going to be set to be endpoint.position. So in our update loop here, we always want to be moving towards whatever our current target is. Whether it's the start point or the end point, we just want to be going there the whole time. So we're going to say, so the our object to move, if I could spell it properly, object to move dot transform dot position, because that's, we're always wanting to be moving that object, should be now equal to a vector tree dot move towards. So previously in our camera controller, we used vector tree dot lerp to move the camera around in the world and to make it smoothly move between where the camera was in the last moment towards where the camera, or towards where we wanted to be ahead of the player. So if we were to use lerp again with our platform, what would happen is we would have it going from standing still to moving very fast and then slowing down as it gets towards the end point, and that would look really weird on a moving platform. So instead we're going to use move towards, which is a more constant thing. It just consistently moves in the same direction at the same speed until it gets to its point that it wants to get to. So we'll see that in action here now in a second, but it's very similar setup to how we used lerp. We need the current position that we're at to start off with. We need the target that we want to move towards, and then we need how long it's going to take to get there, or how much we should move along the way. So first of all, we need where we currently are. So where we currently are is just the object to move dot transform dot position. Where we want to go to is our current target, and then how much we want it to move, or how fast we want it to move, is our move speed multiplied by time dot delta time. Because again, we're working within our update loop, so we want it to move a consistent amount every single time, so we want to multiply it by time dot delta time, so it only moves however long it's taken for the last frame to update. Okay, so we've got that in place now, and we'll actually, before we go on any further, we'll just test that out and make sure that that's working, because we always want to make sure that our scripts are working before we start adding more complicated things in. So at the basic level, we need to know that this is definitely moving our platform back and forward. So we'll go to our moving platform kind of holder here, and we're going to add the script to that. So we'll say moving object. We need to know what object we're going to move. We know that's the tin platform there like that. We need to know what our start point is and what our end point is, and we need to know our move speed, which we'll set to be, say, 3. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is just hit our play button and make sure that our platform is moving back and forward. And rather than walking our player over there, we'll just go to our scene view here, and we can see our platform moved over to the endpoint. Perfectly fine, just the way we wanted to, but of course it's not moving back between each one just yet. So we need to go into our script, and we need to tell it how to know when it should switch. And basically we just need it to switch when it gets to the endpoint. So we will say here, if our, not our current target, but our object moves current position, so our object to move dot transform dot position, if that is equal to our endpoint position, so our endpoint dot position, then we know that, okay, we've reached that point, so we need to set our start point to be our current target. So now our current target should be equal to start point start point, there we go, start point dot position. So now what will happen is, okay, if we get to the end point, then we'll say, okay, now that we've reached there, we need to start moving back towards the start point. So then our start point will be set as a target, and it'll start moving again towards that. But then once we get back to the start point, we want to reset it back to being the endpoint position. So if we do all this and we set our target to be the start point position, then we can add another if statement down here and say if object to move dot transform dot position is now equal to start point dot position, and we'll close that bracket. Then within our curly brackets here, we can just say our current target should now be equal to endpoint dot position, and hit our semicolon, and we should be all good on what we've got in our script now. So now it knows, okay, if we reach the endpoint, our target should be the first point, and if we reach the first point again, our target should be the end point. Now we've got a bit of an error here. Oh, I think I know. Oh, yes. So we've got an error here because we just said equals. I think I mentioned this in the previous video, but I'm not sure. We haven't actually used it properly yet. But because we're doing an if statement here, what we're doing is we want to check if this is equal to this. And if we just use one equals sign like this, we're setting that to be the value. So all we're saying here is the transform position should be equal to the endpoint position, but we're not actually checking anything, so that's why we're getting an error. So what we need to do is put 2 equals like that, because 2 equals basically means check if these two things are equal. So if we save this now, we should get rid of that error, which is it's an important one to remember. Again, it's one of those common kind of simple mistakes that people make, but luckily it's one that usually gets caught by the error messages down here. So if we now go, we have everything all set up nicely. If we hit play, again I'll switch back to the scene view rather than bringing our player over there for the moment, and we'll see our moving platform just kind of bounces back and forward between these 2 points. So it all looks good. Our moving platform is working nicely for us, but there is one extra little problem that isn't necessarily apparent until you go and actually walk over to the platform. So let's go over there, jumping over all this stuff, wait for it to come back. Hopefully it'll come back close enough. No, it doesn't. Excuse me. Okay, we need to make that start point a little bit closer to the platform here. Let's just do this like this. So now we'll go over, we jump on top, and what happens is our player and the platform just kind of slides around by itself. I have to walk to kind of try and keep up with the platform, and that's no good to us. If I just stop moving, we slide off the edge, and that's no good. And it's because the way we have our character controller set up is that when we're not moving, our velocity should be 0. So we're not just going to magically go along with this thing. And also because our player has the kind of slidey material so that we won't grab onto the side of platforms like that. Because we have that set, our platform also doesn't try to bring us with it. So we need to make a simple little script that will make our moving platform grab onto the player. So we're going to do that next.